Just that idea of imperfection. And obviously we've already talked about imperfection and its role in art, that, nothing's perfect. The thing that pops into my head right now is the Persian rug makers who would intentionally weave small mistakes into their work because perfection is the realm of God.
That was Timmy Riordan discussing the song Little Bit of Gold, which I wrote after being inspired by Psalm 80. I'm Shep Rosenman. This is The Rest is Commentary, where we discuss what songs inspired by the Psalms or Tehillim inspire in my guests. Timmy is a songwriter who's always looking for ways to help others write their best songs, and of course aiming to write a good song or two himself. For well over a decade, he's been organizing the Fearless Songwriting Challenge. The challenge is to write 7 songs in 7 days. Well, wait, that's wrong. Writing the songs is the fun part. The challenge is ignoring resistance, capital R, and our inner critics, capital I and capital C, so we can get to the fun part every day for 7 days in a row. Lots of people who complete the challenge attest to writing their best songs ever. Timmy lives in the Boston area and went to Sarah Lawrence College. Timmy is a good friend and one of my earliest songwriting mentors. I talk about the Fearless Songwriting Challenge all the time on this podcast. You can find out more about Timmy or the challenge by looking either of them up on Facebook, or feel free to DM me if you want more information. The next Fearless Challenge starts the week of April 19th. Consider stepping outside your comfort zone and joining us on that journey. We're dedicating this episode to the memory of Timmy's mom, Mary Beth Smidge Spellman Riordan, who died on March 2nd, 2026. You can read about Smidge in the obituary section of the John B. Douglas Funeral Home website. That's John B. Douglas, 2 S's, funeralhome.com/obituary/Mary Beth Riordan. May Smidge's memory be a blessing, and may her family find comfort in this uncomfortable time. In this episode, Timmy and I will be talking about, you got it, fearless songwriting, how the interplay between head and heart enriches creativity, the concept of living with imperfection, how biblical psalms, divine mystery, and the unpronounceability of God's name can evoke wonder and awe, the importance of mentors, spaces, and rituals that foster inspiration and courage to share, the idea that every song and every act of creation leaves a ripple that impacts others and contributes to a collective artistic and spiritual heritage. We talk about so much more too. Let's start off by listening to Little Bit of Gold.
Wonder and wine inside. Little bit of gold fills the crack. Strokes of a brush bring you back. Little bit of gold fills the crack. Fractured, 70 faces cracked and bleeding.
Hey, Timmy.
Hey, Shep, what's happening?
Everything is good. Thank God. It's good to see you again.
Great to see you too.
We've now known each other for about 15 years. Can you believe that?
That is true.
Song School 2010, where you started. I am sitting here today in part because of the wisdom you shouted at me lovingly and kindly.
We should qualify that, or at least elucidate that in some way. It was a class I was teaching. I do remember speaking fairly loudly.
But do you remember this? Obviously, you remember the subject, but nobody else does necessarily.
Yeah, no, we were talking about fearless songwriting, a lot of which was inspired by and probably directly pilfered from Stephen Pressfield's book, The War of Art, as well as some of the artist's way. So the Fearless Songwriter Project is something we do, about the challenge. We do that about 6 times a year, and I run 5 of them. And the idea is to write 7 songs in 7 days to the best of your ability.
I've heard conflicting things about the extent to which the songs are supposed to be written in a specific time each day, like 45 minutes, an hour. Is there a rule around that?
No, there is a guideline that I used to hew to fairly closely, which is to try to write it in about 45 minutes. And I suggest that to other people as well, merely for the sake of sanity. But if you have time and you're fairly stable, there's no reason not to take a little more time with it, Or if you're involved, if you get into the flow of things and, it ends up taking an hour and a half, who cares?
I recently heard, I have no clue where I heard this, but whoever was talking was advocating that once you start, stick with it until it's done, because otherwise you lose whatever it was that initially inspired you in the moment. Do you find that to be true?
I mean, I find that to be true, but I know lots of songwriters sort of take their time, and they aren't generally the folks that show up in the challenge, I should say. I think there are a lot of ways to find inspiration in the world, and there are a lot of ways that songs come to people, and I tend to just scrawl something out and I'll make some edits, and the process of singing the song will smooth it down a little bit more, sort of like a stone in a river.
Do you blah blah, or do you do the words come to you as the music, or the music as to the words? Like, what's your typical sequence?
Well, for a little while I was using tarot cards at first. So I build like kind of a sheet of ideas, kind of what I call a word splatter. And in that is kind of like a traditional like brainstorming, like a mind map, kind of just branching word in the center of the page and words branching off of that. And then often I'll look up that word in the center in a dictionary and I'll write down phrases from that word or anything connected, maybe some similes. And then down on the bottom of the page, I'll do a bunch of rhymes.
Related to the center of the mind.
Related to the center word, yeah.
And do you mean synonyms or similes?
I do mean synonyms, but then page 2 is building metaphors and similes.
So it's very process, or it's very head. Sounds like it's very head.
Yeah, and then it's just kind of like built like mulching or tilling the earth, probably closer to tilling the earth, where you're just kind of like creating a fertile ground to draw from. Then page 3 will be sort of looking at the similes and the word map and starting to, just see if anything pops. Often at that point, it's kind of a combination of, what's popping into my head and just sort of like, stream of consciousness, automatic writing type thing. And then if I get stuck, kind of scanning my eyes over the couple pages of kind of blather and seeing if there's anything useful there.
So it sounds like it's a head-heart combination, because you're starting sometimes with the head, sometimes with the heart. There's a whole head process, but then at stage 3 or page 3, you really kind of bring the heart into it. And all of that is in 45 minutes.
In theory. I mean, I don't think it's really been 45 minutes for, 5, 6, 10 years. I don't know. I started doing when I first started doing this thing, I set out 45 minutes, and I figured 45 minutes is still like a good solid like place to begin to just sort of like throw ideas down. I don't know if you ever got a chance to work with Peter Himmelman at Song School, but his class was largely like a TED talk at the beginning where he talks about, how if you had a gun to your head or were offered, let's say $500,000 because of inflation, and someone asked you that to write a song in the next 5 minutes, you would write something. And he would kind of do a series of like, oh, here's 5 minutes, here's a half hour, here's 15 minutes, write something and see what happens. The combination of that and, a lot of the stuff that came out, I mean, obviously the idea is pretty much just stolen from Paul Reisler, and I'm sure other people besides him have had it. So Paul Reisler starts his class saying how he has written a song a day for nigh on, I don't know, 30 or 40 years or something like that. I don't know if he still does it or not, but there was a period of time where he would write a song a day come hell or high water. What started him on that process was, to the best of my memory, someone saying to him, I bet you a beer you won't write a song a day for 7 days. And something clicked in him and he got his beer.
Well, so you mentioned important influences in my life. Obviously, Paul, I think you and Paul together really kind of set me on this journey because while you were talking about fearless songwriting, he was advocating, song a day as well. You offering the fearless space on Facebook allowed me to really kind of actualize that. And to be very candid, the first time I did this, that summer after song school in 2010, I was like, there's no way I'm going to write 7 songs in 7 days. I'm going to commit to 2 or 3. And at the time, I could not figure out how to get that 7th song in on Shabbat. I've since figured out that Saturday night is available to me too, even if it's late. 7 out of 7, it's like, yeah, that's not the challenge. Now the challenge is, can I do 7 out of 7 in 45 minutes or less? And that's the place where I struggle because I've learned that I'm a finisher. I love to finish things. So part of me wants to, in 45 minutes, get, 3 verses, a chorus, and a bridge in there with like an instrumental hooky thing. But what I like, my learning is you just need to put out whatever you do in 45 minutes, whatever it is. Don't push it past. The challenge that I have within the Fearless Challenge, and we haven't even we're doing this a little bit backwards. We're in the conversation about inspiration, but the challenge that I have is that I write most of my Fearless songs with Liz Hanlon out of New York. So I have no control over her time. We don't have like the same challenge. Like she just takes your prompt, or she takes what I send to her in response to your prompt and she works with it. She may spend 5 minutes. She may spend 5 hours. I have no idea. I have no control over that. I can only control my time, and my time, I'm very careful to limit 45 minutes. Actually, no, an hour. To be truthful, goal is 45 minutes, but I always give myself an hour, and I'm very careful to do it. And that's true even when I like put out some of these fuller productions. Like what I'll do is I will, as it were, roll tape, and I'll play a guitar part one time through, play a bass part one time through. I'll find a drum part that works fairly well with it, and I'll sing through it with one take, which means you get a lot of flat and sharp notes, or you might not even get the melody that I had originally intended, but I'm done within the hour and I've uploaded it. And for me, that kind of really checks the finishing box, and it allows me to check the live with imperfection box, which is very hard for me.
Yeah, I mean, the live with imperfection box is probably the real challenge in the Fearless Challenge. There, and that's the challenge with all art in a way. no matter how good you get, you're always going to know what your weaknesses and foibles are and all that stuff. And what you see isn't necessarily what the outsider sees. You know, the experience of the listener that's engaging with the art is always wildly different. Have you seen this book? What is it? The boy, the horse, the mole, and some other thing that I can't remember.
No?
This beautiful, like, kind of children's book with a variety of different styles of art that are all like kind of loose and calligraphy like. I think the guy's using watercolors, he's using some like fine charcoals, he's definitely doing some pen and ink stuff.
Do you remember his name?
Charlie Maxey, I believe, is the guy's name. Macksey, if I'm remembering. But, you know, just looking at that artwork that is so loose and alive and beautiful, and he's probably generally pleased with, but I'm sure there's also places where he's like, oh, this didn't come out quite the way I wanted it to, you know?
Well, it's super brave when you commit to creating something and posting it regardless of the state it's in, living with the imperfection. That's why the timepiece is really important. I have an acquaintance. Her name is Jacqueline Nichols. She's a super talented artist. And in the Jewish community, there's something called Daf Yomi, which literally means a page a day. And the idea is you study a page of Talmud a day. She did this cycle, which takes 7 years. And she drew something every day based on what was studied that day. And a little bit I'm not doing it a page a day. I have a full-time job and I don't get paid for this full-time job, which is music is also a full-time job. Like I have to kind of squeeze in earning a living in there somewhere. But if I did, like I'd write a psalm song a day, and honestly, I could write a psalm song or 3 a day for the rest of my life and not finish everything I have to say about them because everyone is unique. The theory of kind of sharing these songs with friends and mentors like you, and I consider you both, is, you know, I was inspired to write a song based on what the Psalmist, King David, King Solomon, Moses, whomever, the sons of Korach, whoever were the authors of the various Psalms, they were inspired to write them. And I think the root word of inspiration, part of it has to do with breathing and part of it has to do with kind of spiritual, like ingesting the divine. If I'm inspired to write a song by what they're inspired by and they were inspired by something divine, my question to you is, what did the song inspire in you? And it can be anything: love, loathing, hope, hatred, questions, curiosity, commentary. I don't really care, but what did it inspire?
What really caught my attention was that hook, a little bit of gold fills the crack. You know, since I first heard of kintsugi, which is the Japanese art of mending a broken vase or vase with gold, that's always just held so much curiosity for me. And also, you know, I think about just that idea of imperfection. And obviously, we've already talked about imperfection and its role in art, that, you know, nothing's perfect. The thing that pops into my head right now is the Persian rug makers who would intentionally weave small mistakes into their work because perfection is the realm of God.
I want to give credit where credit's due. Back to song school, I pushed myself out of my comfort zone by going to the My Bloomfield Writing from the Heart classes and the Maura Smiley, essentially writing small things that communities can sing. Now, each of them is within my comfort zone, but it's not where I typically go to learn. This was day 2 of the My Bloomfield Writing from the Heart. And this one did come from the heart. My vague recollection is that it was about repair or coming back to yourself. And on day 1 of this, I really wrote something that was, I would describe it as coming from the heart, but starting with the head. I went back for day 2, not only because Maya is an amazing teacher and so, like, has such a beautiful soul, but because I felt like, you know what, I didn't achieve the purpose of the session in that I really started with the head rather than letting it come from the heart. With this one, I started with the heart. That got me back to the head because I was like, oh my God, I know that there's a psalm about this. I just have to figure out which one. I found Psalm 80, and it had exactly the relevant language, restore us, O God. The text of the psalm sidesteps this notion of kintsugi, but I too have been fascinated by it for years because, my mother, may she rest in peace, always used to say, love me warts and all. The first version of this was very kind of major and happy, and it was unbroken in that sense. There was very little tension in it. And so the first version, let's see if I can even kind of find the original language, what I wrote and delivered, in that 20 minutes, because that's all she gave us. A little bit of gold fills the crack. In time, anew you coming back, a little bit of gold fills the crack. You gave me a gorgeous vase, 70 faces living and breathing, bold and delicate patterns, feeding the wonder, wisdom, and wine inside. So some of this made its way into the final. You fractured this gorgeous vase, 70 faces cracked and bleeding, wisdom, wonder, and wine stampeding across the ancient granary floor. You fractured this gorgeous vase. So even though that's a pretty dark image, right? The melody for it was very major and happy, and I can find it. Maybe I'll even kind of include it in the podcast. When we got home from song school, Mai told us she was going to do this. She gave us a deadline by which to complete these songs. So I went ahead and rewrote. I finished the lyrics, and it came into its kind of the version you heard, which contains it's a red clay jar, 70 faces, the rose with 13 petals. Like, it has a lot of, but not all of it. Well, then when I sat and I started to play it, I was like, you know what? This is wrong. This happy, clappy thing, it's for another song. So I had to tear them apart and start again. And I kept hearing this major and happy. And I think that there are times where you want to go opposite action. I did not feel it for this one. And after several tries, I was like, okay, the muse is finally on the same page as I am. And that's where this version came out, which I think is more appropriate. It's more about tension, even though there's a hopeful component to it. The song isn't just depressing and dreary. It's kind of peppy, but it has hope within it, especially from the bridge on, at least the way I'm thinking about it. You gave me a red clay jar. So the first image, because I was thinking about kintsugi, the first image has to do with a vase. And in the first version that I read to you before, it was in fact a vase. But as I was thinking about it, I was transported back to thousands of years ago, the time of the writing of the Psalms or the time of the destruction of the temple, where they had clay jars. It wasn't so much fancy vases.
Amphora, the big wine jugs that you age wine in. Yeah.
We're having this conversation just days before Hanukkah, where the miracle was that, they had enough oil for 8 days, even though it was supposed to be for one. They were kept in clay jars, and all the jars had been broken by the Assyrians or the Seleucids or the Greeks. That's where the red clay jar came from. I was imagining the decoration around it as 70 faces. So 70 faces is a reference in, you know what? I'm going to stop. What do you think it all means?
I don't know. I think I've said this to you before, but in, the context of Hanukkah and Judaism and what I know of it, just that, sort of idea that God is not to be a graven image, is not to be defined in a way, is meant to be, a state of, again, my understanding is sort of a state of wonder.
So God is in the vase.
God is a state of mystery that can't really be defined. And also, In a lot of ways, the world we exist in is that very same thing, a state of mystery that, we put words on, but can you really, say what a lot of things are? No. If you are a theist, then, you're saying that God is the place that comes from, but, you still can't define God. So I can jive with that. I can understand that sort of overwhelm and wonder and awe at the mere existence of things.
Are you comfortable sharing whether you're a theist?
It's hard to say. I feel like I'm more of an agnostic, but I was raised Catholic, so I mean, my bones are
Theistic bones.
marinated in theism. It's very difficult to sort of put words on, and saying even the word God in a sense like sort of defines it, doesn't it? I certainly believe in the wonder of the universe and like the wonder of existence. And it seems like whatever canvas that stuff is painted on is indescribable. And, and you could call that God, or you could call that, divine, certainly.
Well, look, all of this aligns with the first commandment.
Remind me of the first commandment. I believe it's something that's to the effect of there is no God but God.
I have to do it in Hebrew. Anochi Hashem Elokecha, asher hotziticha me'eretz Mitzrayim, lo tiyeh lecha Elokim acherim. I am the Lord your God that took you out of Egypt. Thou shalt not have, or you shall, not will, but shall not have. Elokim acherim could mean another God, or it could mean other gods, or other godlike figures. This, because translation is an imperfect science. So that's where all of that lines up. I unequivocally am a theist. Like you, I don't know how to define God. We don't have language that allows us to define God. Judaism does not have a pronounceable, in this day and age, word for God. We have the word Elohim or Elokim, which is the judging God. We have Adonai, which acknowledges God's sovereignty. And we have this word, Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. Notice that I'm making spaces between each of the letters because I'm not trying to pronounce it. In the Seventh-day Adventist and other traditions, it's pronounced as Yahweh, which is incorrect. It's a mistranslation of Hebrew because it's the same letters. It's close, but none of us knows how to pronounce it, even with the Masoretic tradition where there are dots telling you allegedly how to pronounce it. And all of this aligns with this undefinable notion of godliness that has many names with many aspects. And what it comes down to is what I think you correctly nailed, which is this God concept is supposed to fill you with wonder, supposed to fill you with mystique, with mystery. What did you say? Had said something so beautiful there. God is a state of mystery that can't be defined. And that's true of the world as well. Whether the world is qua understanding how politics actually works, which certainly in this day and age we can't, or understanding how one unravels economic systems, you can label it, but there are always exceptions to these rules and systems. But, there's an overarching system, and some of us call that God in certain respects. Red clay jar is a metaphor. It's a red clay jar, and it's a metaphor for a gift that was given to us. So in the Jewish tradition, that could be the Torah. It could be the gift of life. 70 faces, the number 70 in Jewish tradition. So the phrase is Shivim Panim LaTorah. There are 70 faces to the Torah. God's wisdom has 70 faces, which is traditionally understood to mean there isn't one right way that we humans can say. Now, the rabbis put a lot of boundaries on that. It's got to come from Moses at Sinai, fit the boundaries of Jewish theology, and I'm sure Christian theologians take the same position. Post-Maimonides, it's got to fit the 13 beliefs. But nonetheless, within that, there are still a myriad of opportunities, and 70 is kind of the number that we use to reflect infinitude. Over Sukkot, the Tabernacles holiday, the 70 nations, meaning however many nations existed at the time, would come and give tribute and offer sacrifices at the temple back then. So it's 70 faces is supposed to say, okay, everybody is polished and painted when God gives this gift to us. The rose, another important metaphor, King Solomon, who allegedly wrote Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs, and Ecclesiastes, uses the rose a lot. Kishoshana ben hachochim. Anyway, he brings up this rose or lily. It's translated both ways. And 13 petals is a reference to Jewish mysticism. Specifically, God says God's going to destroy the Israelites after one of their many blunders. I think this one was after the sin of the golden calf. Moses says, Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum V'chanon, Erech Apayim V'Rav Chesed V'Emet, Notzer Chesed Lalafim, etc., etc. And we call it the 13 attributes of mercy. And the Kabbalists later take that same number 13, as did Maimonides, and the 13 attributes of mercy become the basic structure for Jewish mysticism in the Kabbalah, referred to as the 13-petaled rose. Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz wrote a beautiful book about that.
You had mentioned another number, the 13 beliefs of something.
Yeah, Maimonides. I think it's no accident that he's picking 13 there, and nor is it an accident that in a historically gendered structure, one begins their process to adulthood as a male at 13. That's the basic structure. And then, of course, you take it to verse 2. Now the rose is fractured. This gift that you've given us, whether it's the Torah or wisdom, it's broken. We're living through a difficult moment. I mean, okay, it might be a broken vase or a clay jar, or it's this structure, this process that you gave us is broken. The wisdom and wonder and wine is stampeding across the ancient kitchen floor. We're leaving it back there in its mundaneness, and we're losing the everyday of it through its brokenness. And the rest of the song is about taking it back. You know, I think it's a little bit ambiguous in the bridge, but I think it gets the job done. You know, the clicking of a pen, meaning you got to do something. You got to at least write, maybe even take action. And then the end of the bridge is a little bit of silliness. You light up my face like lemon chocolate halava. That's just something sweet and yummy. So I rarely get to break these down that way. So I thank you for asking. It was fun to explain it. Do you want to play a song for us?
Okay, let's just do it. We'll make it fit in.
Riding shirtless in the sun, these rails ain't no fun. It's been a long time since anyone thought much of me. I'm a cat that can't catch a mouse, migrant worker, not a souse. On the rails, from Taos to the sea, want to find me a place where no one knows my name. I'll tell them proud I'm called McGee. And I used to have a home before those dust clouds swarm. Now everybody calls me a damn Okie. In the California hills, they've got fruit up to the gills. They'll need workers, I hope they will, for that crop. Sleep with the stars above my head. Make some green, keep my family fed. Ride this train, hope to get there before it rocks. Want to find me a place where no one knows my name. They'll tell them proud I'm called McGee. And I used to have a home before those dust clouds swarmed. Now everybody calls me Damn Okie. San Bernardino, that train just stops, and a light caved in the box. The railroad detective jumps in and shouts, the only good Okie's dead one. Want to find me a place where no one knows my name. I'll tell them proud I'm called McGee. And I used to have a home before those dust clouds swarmed. Now everybody calls me the Damn Okie.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Tell me about the process of writing that. I mean, you've clearly set it up so that it's during or post Dust Bowl with the train and the Okie and the detective, all of that. And by the way, I love the internal rhymes.
Oh, thank you. I love internal rhymes. I think they are delightful. Yeah, this is a song that came out of a thing I used to do in February's, very similar to what David Cole does now in January's, which is to write a song every day for a full month. I chose a short month.
Was this part of FAUM or something else?
It's when I discovered FAUM. It's when I started doing this, and someone was like, you should check out February album writing month. Yeah. The first time I did it, I just did it by myself because I wanted to see like how far I could push this song a day thing. And I felt like, doing it indefinitely was more than I wanted to commit to, but like just see like where the point of diminishing return seemed to happen. And I think it happens in about the third week, is my experience. But so the next year I invited people to write in parallel with me, more or less. So I found 28 other songwriters, which eventually became, I think, 30, because like I invited more people than there were days in the month, is what I'm trying to say. On whatever day this happened, I was writing with a guy named Mike Heimbaugh, who I'd met at Song School, or writing in parallel, and he suggested the prompt of "It's been a while." So there's that line towards the mid part of the first verse that "It's been a while since anyone's thought much of me." That's the direct quote. And the rest is really just the weird magic of songwriting, like that mysterious thing where sometimes I started out writing what was essentially a beer commercial, like having fun in the sun. In my mind, there was definitely bikini clad women and like a silver bullet train or something. That wasn't what I wanted to write. And I'm not sure when exactly it switched over, but it switched over to my recollection of it is that it switched over very quickly as I started to write the second verse. And it just kind of locked in on this kind of historical like Grapes of Wrath thing that I also weirdly connect to my father because he grew up in Flagstaff, Arizona, and he would say that like a hobo, like an indigent person, would wander through and like his mom would like ask him to do some chores and give him a meal or something like that. So like I had this sort of like emotional connection to that. And back in the mid 90s, Annie DeFranco did this album with a guy named Utah Phillips, who was a proud hobo and wobbly, WWW, Workers of the World, and anarchist, basically your true salt of the earth folk singer. And so I'd listened to his stuff a bunch over the years and sort of his stories of being on the trains. And it all just kind of amalgamized into what this story is.
But it felt very real. Even though I'm still a New Yorker, I'm really a Californian because I've been here for more than half my life. And having been to Taos and just all the descriptors felt right. I remain curious, why McGee?
Because it rhymes. I mean, it doesn't make a good story, but like what I remember is writing those lines and it just coming out McGee and then getting like continuing to write. And I used to have a home before the dust clouds stormed or whatever. Now everybody calls me and it was like, oh, he's a damn Okie. And maybe I went backwards at some point. It was like, what rhymes with damn Okie? But I don't know. I think there is something to like in Boston, and I think obviously in other cities, like when the Irish arrived in the mid to late 1800s, they were unwanted.
Well, if my memory is correct, the folks that moved to Oklahoma in this time period were largely Anglo-Saxon, which includes Irish, right?
Yeah.
So it's English, Scottish, Welsh, Irish. And nonetheless, the speaker, perhaps it's not, he's looking up to being an Irishman, or perhaps the speaker wants to just reestablish where she or he or they came from and simply be known by their family name rather than, have this other negative appellation.
The story itself is slapped on top of what is an emotional truth that I felt. It's like, oh, it's been a while since anyone's thought much of me. I wasn't feeling that good about myself. Maybe I'm still not feeling that good about myself,
Did you grow up feeling like that?
Yeah. My parents moved from California. They ended up in Palo Alto, which is where they met. I think my mom grew up there, and my dad did to some extent too, but he like I said, he was born in Flagstaff. And he lost his job, and the job that he was able to find was a job at MIT at their linear accelerator at the Bates Laboratory. So my brother and my mom and my dad in the late 60s moved to Massachusetts and left everything they had behind.
So little Timmy is in the song. An adult Timmy is in the song. If you could give little Timmy some advice, what would you tell him?
I just tell him I'm here for him, and that I'm here to support him. And, I love him, basically.
That's beautiful. I want to add to that because I'm going to give little Timmy a message. And by doing so, also give big Timmy a message. You may not understand the impact you have on those of us who participate in the Fearless Songwriting Challenge, because you hold this space for us that allows us to invite in the muse. Now, like I'm someone, I feel truly blessed in that all I have to do is invite the muse. Like I'm walking the dog, I'm sitting in my computer, I'm in the shower. All I have to do is either specifically invite in the muse or notice that the muse is playing with me, right? And something pours out. It could be a groove, it could be a melody, it could be a lyric, it could be an idea to write about something. So people like you and Shanna and Amy Speece and other Justina Chandler and other people who kind of hold these spaces that invite people to create. Look, not everybody who participates in these spaces is an amazing songwriter. Some of them truly are, though. Like, I'm not going to mention any people by name, but there are, like, I have my favorites. I'm like, oh my God, every time that person delivers a song, it's fucking brilliant. And like, they make it so effortless. And then there are other people who I'm like, okay, I'm going to listen to this, and because they're part of this community and it's respectful, and I may not love the song, but I love that they're doing it. That's the amazing thing. And so when you hold these spaces, like, dude, you get credit for all of these creations. Like, I'm at it 15 years later, and you're always going to be part of it because you pushed me on this journey. So, like, little Timmy, dude, you need to understand the impact you're having. Even if you have other ideas about yourself, your impact is global.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. And thank you, my friend. I really appreciate your friendship, your mentorship. I often end these with a blessing, if you don't mind.
Yeah. No, of course.
My blessing to you is, in fact, that you allow yourself to enjoy the impact you have on all of us by creating this space, and that in doing so, even more people are able to kind of access it because, you know, you've got a beautiful soul and people react to that. And in our tradition, we say, Dvarim hayotzim min halev, nichnasim el halev. Words and things that come out of the heart enter the heart. So you are so filled with heart and, of course, brain, but the heart is at the heart of it, as it were.
Thank you, Shep.
Of course. Thank you, Timmy.
That's very kind. What cool, like, opportunity to discuss ideas and song and mystery and creativity. So thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. May we do so again and again. Thanks so much for listening. Special thanks to Timmy for joining me, to Mai Bloomfield, who ran the workshop at Song School where this song started, to Sean Kawanami for his arrangement and keyboard work on the song, and to Luca Feliz for adding some of the guitars. To David Coyle for his help in producing this episode, to E-Rose for his help in producing the song and this episode, to Jessica Hanna-Sweetler for her help on social media, to Liat Silvera for designing the podcast logo, and to my wife Sherry, who often offers the gold that fills the cracks of our lives. You can find A Little Bit of Gold and all of the other songs in this song cycle on most platforms that stream or download music, including Spotify and Apple. Please support the podcast and these songs by sharing, liking, commenting, and subscribing on your favorite platforms as often as you can stomach. In the next episode of The Rest is Commentary, I'll be talking with my friends Tal Or Cohen Montemayor, founder and CEO of Cyberwell, a nonprofit that works with the major social media platforms to track anti-Semitism online, and with Ellie Ovitz, who is involved with more organizations than I can keep track of. We first worked closely together in the Limud movement. The three of us discussed the role of technology in managing online hate, including anti-Semitism, the importance of systemic reform and digital literacy, the history and evolution of free speech, strategies for safer online spaces, Cyberwell's approach to combating hate speech, America's complex relationship with religious freedom, understanding extremism and its management, and so much more, all inspired by Tal Or's and Ellie's thoughts after listening to Windstorms, inspired by Psalm 64. Please join us.